Are we experiencing a little calm before the storm? Now, we start the month of October today. Last week in crypto was pretty bloody with prices mostly falling. But zooming out, it looks like overall a two-step forward, then one step back, just like it normally does in bull markets. However, some are convinced this bull run is mostly over. Are they right? Well, today we'll dive into some price action and let's see. We'll look at the zooming out overall prices, see if this is over or if this is just, like I said before, the calm before the storm. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. Now, I grew up poor in life, actually too poor for Kool-Aid. If you haven't heard that story, I'll share it with you sometime. I realized that money allowed us options in life. And after a few months of being in crypto, when I started 8 years ago, I recognized crypto investment had the most amazing, massive potential for financial gains that can change your life completely. Because most of us want the things that money can get us, whether that's a lot of travel, whether that's freedom and choices like what I wanted. Maybe it's nice cars, maybe it's nice houses. But for me, no money equals no options. And I had been waiting for this chance my whole life. Now, after 8 years, I know that crypto can and will change your finance and your life, but only if you do it right. I also learned along my journey that 89% of people in crypto don't make meaningful money or they flat out lose money. And I didn't want to be part of that myself. Another 6% of people make money, but just over a little over 5% of crypto investors make life-changing gains that take them into the lifestyle we all dream about as kids. So I focused 100% of all my efforts on learning and figuring out what those 5% did, and then putting it into practice myself. By 2021, using those principles, I was able to fire my day job, move to the city I wanted, and put myself in position to never have to work again if I didn't want to. Now, these principles will do the same for you. Today is our price analysis day. This is a day where we combine what we've learned with also the knowledge of our special guest, Paul, who is joining us from DEVVE. And Paul has 30 years price analysis experience, looking at charts, looking at prices, and seeing what information that might tell us. And it is a fun time to be looking at these price movements as I think things are going to get better. And we can look at what's cheap, what is real cheap, and what might be expensive, and what might be about to explode. Now, if you're looking to be part of that 5% that make life-changing gains, join our Patreon. The link to that is below. That will give you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. This is where the most valuable private discussions for becoming a savage crypto investor are, and unlocking that in you. Now, do note, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul looks at many different markets, and none of this will be taken as financial advice. So help me welcome Paul from DEVVE to the stage.
Hello there. How's it all going?
Good. Good. I'm actually quite excited. I've been waiting for Q4 for a while.
Yeah. September, October, August period has been low vol going into September where things picked up a bit, and then a little bit of a sell-off towards the end of September, shaking a few people up, but macro trends still on course for a further upside. Yeah, and of course we may see corrections. Those corrections may be equity related as opposed to Bitcoin related, but everything's doing what it should do, really. And it was a bit disappointing that some of the altcoins didn't break into a new high, but they were fairly stretched. The major ones, particularly ETH, when we were discussing the breakouts, they'd had a pretty good run up to that point, and it would have been nice if the technical patterns had followed through for a further breakout, but that doesn't negate them. It doesn't say that it's not going to happen. It's just that it's delayed a bit. But overall, things are looking more interesting. We've also got potential for another cut in interest rates at the next meeting, which is quite incredible, really, if you think about what the markets are doing. Powell suggested that the markets were fully valued, or he mentioned some comment about the valuations of equities, which had caused a little bit of a sell-off or pullback, but markets just shrugged it off and off it goes again, because they can see that the outlook is for lower rates going forward. It's going to take a time before that turns around, and risk on is just going to keep going. And of course, we're going to look through the charts, but you should have a look at, again, where we are with gold and silver and the precious metals, and that tells you a lot about where money's flowing.
Mhm. Yeah, I want to take a look at that with you and see what you're seeing on those charts. We'll dive into some crypto in a bit, but before that, what charts are you looking at and what are you seeing?
Well, as normal, we start off with the equity markets, and this is still an upward trend. This is a weekly chart of the Dow. It had a little wobble, which doesn't actually even look like a wobble anymore, induced by the Powell comments, but it's recovering again. Now, of course, that might be that this does form into some short-term top, and even if it does, and it comes back to retest this 44,000, it will look kind of a bit scary, perhaps a bit of a shakeout, and maybe there'd be some news that could drive it down. But most people are still looking for a top. They're looking to short the market, and whilst this is going on, I'm still going to go with the upside and look for further gains. So the equity markets are looking good. That's the Dow Jones 30, which of course is only 30 stocks. So we've got to look a bit broader. Transportation stocks haven't broken into a new all-time high. It would be good for those to confirm at some point, but not really the end of the world. The Nasdaq, again, squeezing into all-time highs or very close to. That trend isn't over. S&P 500 is doing the same. So what can one say other than this is a bull market, and it's been a bull market for a while, and it still looks like it's a bull market. The VIX index has been edging up a little bit, and people get a bit nervous when that happens. Maybe there's something behind that. We will have to examine that as we go. But for the moment, breakouts are pretty much on the upside. There was some concern about the UK and some UK politics, and the UK stock market has just broken into an all-time high. And it's interesting again that the headlines are all very negative here, and not that you guys would be looking at that anyway, but what it reminds me of is why I look at charts, because the headlines are always out there to make you do the wrong thing, or to be fearful at the wrong time, and also to not be fearful when you should be. And so that's all going in the right direction. But as for gold and silver, gold is now, from this breakout at 3,000, about 400, we're now at 3,800, and silver is on its way to this $50 area, which was the previous all-time high. And then platinum and palladium look like they're potentially basing out, or platinum's broken higher as well. So there's this confluence of precious metals moving up, and also base metals. I won't go through all of them, but they're going up as well. All of these things are a direct result of rates going down and the dollar going down, and areas like China spending money, and it's just showing that the economy is doing well. So global economy is still powering on, and there's a lot of money swirling around, and there's going to be even more soon when they cut rates. I mean, where's it going to go? Probably into the crypto market. And before we look at the actual Bitcoin chart, we can go and have a look at the short-term interest rate futures and see what they're saying. And this is the 3-month money, which is at 3.85%. So it's looking like rates are going to go down, certainly not up at this stage. 6-month money at 3.7, again implying that rates are going to continue lower. 2-year money is sitting on a level where that could possibly break lower, which is pretty crazy. And it's only when you get to 10-year money that you see some form of consolidation. So for the moment, and I don't know how long that will last, for the moment, it seems to be that there's money's staying at a low level. The problem that can arise is when interest rates start to rise, or if the long end, which is, and the long end we mean the 10-year bond, starts to rise aggressively, and the government's got to borrow at a higher and higher rate, that will bring the stock market down. And it's certainly not what people want. But whilst this is being well behaved, borrowing can be done for businesses and for the government at a relatively cheap level, or a relatively stable level, which is what the market likes. So we keep an eye on that as a canary in the coal mine. But for the moment, it's moving in the right direction, or at least staying stable. And just to remind you, when Trump decided to change his view about tariffs, it was because this had started to power higher, and the cost of borrowing for the US government was going through the roof. And so he blinked and had to sort of change his tact. So the bond market really drives more than people realize, although the stock market is where it's reflected in the day-to-day activity that people look at. So the dollar as a trend continues to work its way lower. It's not a straight line, and it's not a smooth trend, not yet anyway. So we may get some form of acceleration at some point, but it's been working its way down for some time now. And having broken this 100 level, retested it, it's still, heading down in the same way that it headed up. It didn't head up in a straight line. It made corrections along the way, and it's doing exactly the same here. So as a target, I would have thought it would head towards sort of the 90 area, which is this low, because that will kind of balance out what's happened here. But we shall see. There could be interruptions to that. There's many people talking about the dollar going down, and sometimes you can all get on one side of the boat, and it has to correct to shake people out of that trade. It almost looks a little too obvious now with rates going down. But having said that, other central banks have been lowering rates too. So the headline again is that the macro scene is looking good, and obviously things can change. So I'm not going to say anything's 100%, but equity markets are behaving themselves, going higher. We've got non-farms on Friday. We'll see whether that's a really weak number, and that's what the market's kind of got wind of, which would definitely cement some form of rate cut in the next meeting. And aside from that, we're seeing some really nice activity in Bitcoin, having corrected and now consolidating. It looks like it could possibly be squeezing up, but that should be in the context of everything moving up, not just Bitcoin. So we'll get onto that when you're ready.
Yeah. I woke up to the headlines this morning that U.S. government is shut down and and it's like end of the world, and it's like I don't know. I've lived long enough to be through a ton of government shutdowns, and nothing ended. Everything ended up fine. It's just a negotiating tactic. And even though the U.S. markets are one of the biggest in the world, like, things all continue. So dollar is coming down. I do think Trump is really at war with the Federal Reserve. He's already replaced one governor. He's replacing the second one. And then I think Jerome Powell is up in May if he doesn't resign earlier. And I think Trump really wants to bring interest rates down a ton, because there's a crisis that the U.S. Government is in that the debt that they have to pay is so big. I think he believes that if he can get interest rates way down, he can grow. The U.S. can grow its way out of the problem without having to do massive cuts to Medicaid, Medicare, and other things, which generally get people voted out of office when they cut those things pretty heavily. So he's trying to grow his way out of the problem. Well, growing his way out of the problem would be bringing interest rates down far more than they're even at now. And so if he's successful, interest rates are going to come down a lot more. And if they do come down a lot more, that puts a lot of money into long-term assets. Like Paul was saying, some of it even goes into precious metals. Part of the reason precious metals are going up is because interest rates are going down. The dollar is going down. So then the price of metals in that, and tangible items with long-term value go up, which is why stocks often go up. Crypto often goes up, and real estate usually goes up in that type of environment. All right. We are live. So Bill Gardner says, let's go Rainmaker, fun under the sun. Good morning. Chris says, morning Rainmakers, happy Wednesday. Chris, thank you for doing the timestamps on our Wednesday videos. We really appreciate that. Big Gay in the house already requesting AVAX, which is on the schedule. Kingdom of Digital Collectibles joining us from Twitter saying, Crypto Rain, what's good? Good to see you, brother. I like that name. Sale is here. Good morning, all. Dan says, Studliest TA on the tube. Johnny says, hi, guys. My patience has been tested to the limits. Let the bull run start. Yes, especially in the higher risk altcoins, which still haven't run yet. Like Bitcoin's been running for a while, and that's nice. I don't hold hardly any Bitcoin. Why? You know, with Bitcoin, you're lucky if you end up buying the bottom, you could get maybe a 10x, sometimes a 15x on it, but it just doesn't have the volatility I was looking for. I'm in the riskier stuff that goes from really, really cheap to really, really expensive, and to get that growth. All right, let's jump into the crypto charts, Paul.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, that some things have moved, and to say that we're not in a bull market when you've got Bitcoin at these levels almost seems like it seems crazy. But of course, it depends where you are. I mean, some people are in stocks that are going down, and we've got equities at an all-time high. So it really depends where you look, doesn't it, as to whether you think it's a bull market or not, or whether it started or not. But yeah, absolutely, there's been a lot of fragmentation in the altcoins. But and look, also, I mean, it bears repeating. I know we say it, but it's not 100% guaranteed that anything's going to happen. Even if there is a big altcoin run, it may not involve the coin that you're in, which is again a frustration. But it's a reality of life, and it's a reality of trading. But you know, that's also the joy of the markets. It's a constant mental exercise as to working out what to do and managing emotions and capital. You know, it's all it's a it's why most people can't do it, to be quite honest with you. It's just too much. But in any case, what we're seeing in the you know, the Bitcoin market is it's had a correction, and that correction has come back to some good support levels, good technical support around 108. Now we're back at 117 or so, and it's still within the range that started around July. So sideways, sideways, sideways. But I like the way these lows are getting higher, and there may be some form of acceleration. So obviously the all-time high is at 124. The closer it gets to that, the greater the chance of a breakout. This looks more compressed as opposed to a reversal. This was a short-term reversal, and we got a change in trend for a bit, that on the tariffs and stuff, the way the market came down quite aggressively. But this is more compressed, which for me feels like we are going to go higher again, and we're just getting ready for that. So people call it Uptober, which I seem to remember from last year. Let's see if it is. But even if it does consolidate, I still think that the interest rate cuts and what we're seeing in the macro stuff towards the end of the year is going to be a very positive period, and we'll see whether these markets respond. ETH, I got very excited about ETH because this was quite a nice technical pattern here. It's called a pennant, and it's usually a precursor to quite a strong breakout. And the fact that it was sitting just below the previous resistance point made it even more interesting, because when the market hesitates like that below a major level, for me, I find that technically a good point to jump in ahead of the breakout. Now, sometimes you get this. It's less often that you get a pullback, but not impossible, of course, because nothing is impossible. And this did pull back and would have taken out short-term positions. But also, interestingly, this has bounced back quite nicely, and it's heading back into this important zone that needs to break out in order for this to head towards, the 5 and the 6. So, so again, I think this chart is very interesting. We've always discussed this big triangular constriction that it's been breaking out from. So ETH looks ready to go, or within a few weeks, perhaps a month, but we should be in the final stages of this breakout, and we'll see whether it powers ahead. But again, it's had a really strong run. Of course, it performed badly here, but it has had a very strong run from this low. So it's not unreasonable to expect a consolidation. On the spreads, let's look ETH Bitcoin spread. ETH has come off and Bitcoin is held more steady, but I like this as some form of reversal, because this was a very strong move, and given the way it come down, you see how it's gone up at the same rate that it's come down. This consolidation here has been repeating here, so it's in the realms of technicals. This is what you would expect to happen, or not uncharacteristic of a market that's had, or spread that has moved a very long way back, and those who were caught out short the other way had to cover their positions, and those who went long maybe at the wrong point on the spread are being squeezed out, which is what the market does. It always keeps the short-term sort of emotional traders on the wrong side of the moves. And then what it looks like to me, this is forming some form of base, so ETH should again move into an outperformance period, but we shall see. It's not guaranteed, it's just a higher probability. So those are the kind of majors. Bitcoin, as I say, still looking bullish, nothing's really changed there, and ETH is just getting ready for a breakout, and whether it's going to outperform Bitcoin or not is to be seen, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did, given the way the spread chart's looking.
Yeah. I like the word probabilities because it describes what we do a lot in investing. The way if you think back to, there's a movie about some math teacher, I think at Harvard or something, and he teaches these honors math kids how to count cards. And then they go into the casino and they make all this money. I forget that, was it called 21 or something? And they make tons of money. And it's like, wait, how did they make money playing cards? And it's because they learned to identify when probabilities were stacked in their favor. But that doesn't mean you win every hand. It just means probabilities are stacked in your favor, and knowing when to bet and when probabilities aren't stacked in your favor. And if you're betting enough, like diversified enough times when the probabilities are stacked in your favor, over time, you're going to win. And that's what investing is identifying when the probabilities are stacked in your favor and then taking the chances. And that's what we do in crypto investing. I use fundamentals and research on companies that are heavily price punished to identify ones that I think where the odds of them doing well are stacked in my favor, and then I hold for the longer term. Paul uses charts and price analysis to realize certain moments when the odds are stacked in his favor, with an entry and then an exit point if it turns the other way. And so that's another way of stacking the odds in your favor, so that over time, with these kinds of rules, and if you're correctly identifying when the odds are stacked in your favor, you can win a lot more than you lose. All right, so that's a good summary. Can we look real quick at the Bitcoin dominance scale? So we see that ETH has risen against Bitcoin a bunch, and possibly going to do a bunch more move again against Bitcoin. But let's look at Bitcoin dominance, see what's happening.
Yeah, just interestingly on what you've said there about probabilities, bouncing back from what we were saying. It is absolutely right that the market is based on probabilities, but it's also something that we don't talk about a lot, or occasionally mention, but is possibly the most important thing when it comes to investing and trading, is capital management. And it's a question of how much capital is put into a certain trade and how that capital is managed. And you can have an opinion on something and not necessarily put a trade on. It's at a certain time. So I might look at something and think, okay, that looks like it's going up, but I might not put a trade on something until, maybe a couple of days later, or maybe something else might look even better. So the markets are a constant. I suppose you could say it's a bit like a competition for your capital, and even when you do see things that look right, it's still capital management is extremely important, because if you go 100% in something, yeah, great if it goes up, but if it doesn't, or if you're using leverage, those things can get you into trouble very quickly. They can also make you a lot of money very quickly as well, which is the double-edged sword of using leverage, which we've mentioned a few times before. But in terms of trading and investing, it really has to be a kind of complete package of all different things. But first of all, you have to start from somewhere, and that starting from somewhere is working out where we are and where the market's probabilities are likely to go, and then how you trade it from that point. And there's a few things that are very consistent in that sense. And one of those things that maybe you've seen over the time that you've watched the show, that the news flow is generally there to make you do the wrong thing at the wrong time. And so avoiding news and following your own plan, whether it's using charts, which is what I prefer, or looking at the fundamentals yourselves, given that it's everyone who's watching this has probably knows a lot more about crypto than I do, and has far more in-depth knowledge of the inner workings of these projects that you're looking at. So you guys know more about that stuff, but it's very easy to get shaken out by news headlines and that sort of other stuff that kind of gets everyone, really, even people in the city, I can say. So so that's all. I just thought I'd mention that. So with regard to, and as I say, just to close that off, I mentioned the FTSE and the UK and how terrible everything is supposed to be here. FTSE's at an all-time high. So what is going on? There's clearly a divergence between what the man on the street is reading in the paper and looking at, and what the markets are actually doing, which is exactly why I look at technicals. But there are other people who are looking at the fundamentals, and they are coming to a similar conclusion. In fact, it's them that's driving the market higher, because I'm only observing it, but they're actually investing in it, which makes it move up. But when it comes to Bitcoin, market dominance, we were looking for a correction, and it has corrected down, and that's been quite a nice move. Now, this is probably an equivalent move from this move here to this move down here. And so clearly a correction back up has been on the cards. And what can I say about that, really? This has been overall an upward trend, but it feels very much like this has changed a trend, especially with this moving average crossover. So after a little rebound, I don't think it will go as far as 60, but if it does, I think that's good resistance there, and I think it should come back down to around 54. So that would imply that that the that we should see a bit more on the upside, and it confirms perhaps what we're seeing in this sideways move in Bitcoin. That it's perhaps getting ready to move. Well, we're seeing the sideways move in Bitcoin. We could be seeing another move in the altcoins that will outperform it. So we shall see. But yeah, this move up looks more corrective, and if it is a positive sign for, dare I say it, some of the other altcoins. And actually, we're going to look at some of the major altcoins. That ETH looks really good. I mean, I've liked Solana for a while, and we're going to be looking at Cardano again, which been a long-term kind of favorite, but comes in and out of our view, doesn't it? We don't look at it every week, and perhaps not even every month, but every now and again it comes in, and it's always looking to eventually break out. It's just whether we've actually got the signal now or not. So perhaps we just jump straight into that. Would that be okay?
Let me jump over to something I want to show on Bitcoin dominance's chart.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin, this is Bitcoin's dominance. What I want to point out is this is the 2021 run. So this is the bear market. So the previous run had been 2017. And prior to that, altcoins weren't really a thing. ETH had been in the work for a while, Tron, and a few other ones. Most of them were just copies of Bitcoin that had like a bigger block size or something, but they weren't really offering anything different than what Bitcoin. They were just different copies of Bitcoin in different ways. But with ETH, you saw the ideas of distributed ledger being used differently in different ways of solving some of the problems. And you started to see really a lot of other altcoins come out in 2017. So this pattern can only be observed since 2017. And that's in the 2017 run. In the run up to the Bitcoin was climbing and climbing and climbing. But then it started to slide down as some of that money shifted into altcoins. So in the lead up to the 2021 run, you see that Bitcoin was growing in price and most of the altcoins weren't moving. And so as Bitcoin was growing in price, nothing was happening with the altcoins till right near the end, starting really in January 2021. And over the next 3 months is when all the lower cap altcoins really did all their moving. And so a lot of people saying that the smaller market cap coins haven't moved yet and they're not going to move and this time it's different. No, it's following the same pattern that Bitcoin has been on the rise since bottoming out in around this time. And a lot of the momentum starts with Bitcoin creating this upward movement here. But at some point, this money will start going into the altcoins, and that point has probably already happened. This was probably the top of Bitcoin's dominance. And the cascade, look how sharp once it starts moving, it really moves quite sharp. And so you saw it do this, and then it really cascaded into the altcoins, which is why Q4 of 2025 might be a really big quarter for altcoins. You see it, that cascade maybe starting here. So how does it play out from here? We'll find out. But I think the top of Bitcoin dominance is in. And it's as it moves down here that some of these lower cap altcoins really move. Is that going to happen this quarter, or is it maybe going to happen first quarter next year or second quarter? I don't know, but the probabilities are pretty decent that it's going to happen this quarter. And if not this quarter, first quarter next year, especially if interest rates in the US continue to come down more. And probably this upcoming reserve meeting, they'll probably bring interest rates down at least one more time. I think if Trump is successful in removing Powell, I think interest rates he'll probably put in somebody very dovish that's going to bring interest rates down a lot more than that. And in that environment, crypto would have tons of money come into it. And even though Bitcoin may be losing dominance, that doesn't mean Bitcoin's price is going down. It just means that the altcoins are gaining a lot faster. All right. That's what I want to share on Bitcoin dominance. Let's take a look at Cardano.
Okay. So Cardano this looks like this is building up for something. So we have got an upward trend. Of course, you could call it a downward trend from here, but I think that ended and we've got higher lows. This consolidation, it broke out here, which I thought, great, off we go, but no, wasn't to be. But it's not turned bearish. It's just been sideways. So at some point, I think this is going to break out. And as a general kind of trend ending signal to all of crypto, eventually, big bear market, I think that will come after potentially we've seen a massive run in the altcoins. It would make more sense because Bitcoin, wherever it's going to go to as a high, whatever the numbers that get thrown out there, I don't think that the public will be participating in Bitcoin. I think they'll be participating in the altcoins in a big way. Now, I could be wrong, but that means that's much more likely to be where the public and people who start calling you guys up and saying, how do I get into XYZ? And think it's like easy money for a period, it might be, but that will be when it's most dangerous. So given that, I think there's got to be that as the trend. I've said many times that will be most likely be the trend ending signal. And for the psychological element, at the top of the show, Jay asked, are we at the top? I don't think we're at the top of the Bitcoin trend. We could be, but I doubt it, because the sentiment isn't right, and the sentiment's got to be right where everybody's all in. So they're most likely to be all in, possibly in Bitcoin, but it may be trading at 150,000 and people don't want to buy Bitcoin because it's, inverted commas, too high. So they're more likely to be in other things. So this is where, the next phase should bubble this stuff up and it should get really very hot. But keep prefacing it with, I could be wrong, but I think the probabilities are on that side. But with regard to these charts are still looking interesting. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to break out tomorrow, and it doesn't mean it's going to break out in a week's time. It might take a bit longer than that, and it certainly has done from this breakout that I was, wrong about. But I was also, kind of bullish around these lows, looking for a turnaround, and it's just taken a bit of time for it to work its way higher. And often markets do that and then suddenly explode. So it wouldn't surprise me if we got this explosion in price. So if I was trading week to week, I'd say it's a wait, but over the long term, I still think it's a buy, and it's always been kind of on the buy list. It's just whether it's ready to go or not. So yeah, for me, it's looking good, and it's right that even though it hasn't broken out, we should keep coming back to it, because I don't want to miss the signs of some acceleration, which would be through this. Let's just get this level here, this big resistance line, which is at 92 cents. It's been on the chart for a very, very long time. And also now what we've got is this very, very clearly defined downward trend. It's not really a downward trend. It's more of a resistance line. It's a line that has been respected 3 times. So if it gets through the 92 and breaks that as well, then to me, that's the green light to some form of change in characteristics and dynamics that could mean it will run. So that's why I think further out it's bullish, but in the short term, it's a wait.
Well, Cardano is one of the altcoins, or excuse me, one of the higher cap altcoins that I do like more than most of them. But a lot of my investment money is in riskier stuff than Cardano. Cardano's market cap at a $30 billion market cap, I do think it's getting ready for some action. Now, it's not as cheap as this is the bear market, with it bottoming out at 24 cents. When it hit 24 cents, I covered it and I was like, Cardano is too cheap. It should not be this cheap. It broke up like $1.30. It's come back down to 84 cents. And generally it's following this 2 steps forward, 1 step back trend. So it runs up, steps back, trades sideways for a while, runs up, steps back, trades sideways for a while. I think it's preparing for another break to the upside. I did get more Cardano, but only because I sold one of my cornucopias land plots that had like a really, it was like a legendary or something. So it had high priority to pick the land. I just wanted to, while everything was so hot, I just wanted to cash one of them out. And so it got me a bunch more Cardano. I think it got me like 1,200 more Cardano, not like a meaningfully huge number, just like $1,000 worth. But I do hold some Cardano because Cardano made me a lot of money in the previous bear market going into the bull market of 2021. And I took most of that and took it out of Cardano when Cardano hit higher numbers, but I still have a little bit of that left over. So I do have some Cardano. I do like it a lot. I especially like over the last year that Charles Hoskinson has really made some meaningful inroads into Washington, D.C. and getting more projects building on Cardano. I was a little bit worried about 16 months ago of, are they going to get enough traction to really stay around long term? Are there enough new people building on it? And I wasn't sure that there was. Since then, with the Trump administration and Charles Hoskinson really being involved in networking in Washington, I think he's got enough momentum that people are building on it. Cardano's going to do just fine. So I like this one for long term. Am I holding blue chips? Not really. Like, am I buying blue chips? No, other than I sold some of my, one of my, maybe two of my piece of cornucopia's land for some Cardano. And so not really buying it. It's not my what within my strategy, but I like where the price is at. I do think it's going to break up to the upside further. And if I were buying blue chips, I would have been buying a whole bunch of Cardano, especially at 24 cents. But it's not a terrible price at 84 cents. It's a good price at 84 cents, not the great price that it was at when it was 24 cents. All right, let's take a look at MYX, which has done some crazy things. Now, there's not a lot of history, and Paul likes to see a lot of history, and there's very little history on this one. It's a fairly new coin, and we'll talk about why it's gone so parabolic.
Yeah, did we look at? I seem to remember that we looked at this maybe a couple of weeks ago, or maybe last week.
Maybe we did. I think somebody had suggested it at some point.
Okay, because I remember looking at something similar, or anyway, it rings a bell. So, yeah, like you say, there's not a lot of history, so all the caveats about this being very volatile and potentially going to zero, or doubling. Who knows really? It's almost like put it on red or black at the casino. But if we were looking at the very short term trend, it's bullish. I can't be bearish something like this because the market is going up, and even though it's going up at an incredible clip, some due diligence has to be done, obviously, to find out what it's in. And given those risks, personally, it would make me reduce the amount that I would want to risk in it, because that the gains could be very big, but also I wouldn't want to lose something on something that could potentially be very volatile. Now, as far as stops goes, at least there is a very clear area where a stop could be placed below $8. So buying at 15 with a stop below 8 tells you what sort of percentage you're going to lose if you get stopped out. But the market is very close to its prior resistance, and if we look at how it did this here, it hit a high, came back, and then moved up. In this case, it moved up in a straight line and took out the previous high and closed well above it, and then did exactly the same again. Now it's doing something similar in the sense that it's correcting. It's moved sideways to up, and it's getting ready potentially for another move. Of course, $20 is always going to be a big psychological level. And so taking profits, I don't think there'll be much shorting going on, but taking profits around $20 when you were looking at a mere cent down here, it's got to be kind of overwhelmingly something that people want to do, invested in early. So that's why this is a barrier. But for it to go through this, there's got to be more people coming in and thinking that this is a really good project. So they must have something that's extremely unique, or has potential to go much, much higher. So it can't just be this first phase and then over. But as far as technicals goes, this is looking ready to break out. It does need to break $20, which is a huge barrier. Do I think it'll do it? Probably. Would I risk much on it? Not really. And if I had to say buy, whether it's for me a buy or a sell, at this point, I would be a buyer. So for me, it would be a buy. And I would either have a very tight stop, or I would, put a stop down here and accept that I'd have to put a smaller position on. But to be sort of to play by the breakout rules, one should really wait for a break over $20 to confirm that it's actually moved. Because I could buy it here and it could just go sideways for quite some time, and then my capital's caught up. But personally, I don't mind that, and I don't mind, getting out even though it hasn't moved, to move into something else if it fails. But so yeah, I think that kind of shakes out into a buy, but with some quite big caveats about potentially what could happen next.
Yeah, MYX is we've seen that this narrative has done really well recently. MYX is a non-custodial derivatives exchange. So derivatives exchanges have done well in the past 2 months. That enables on-chain trading of perpetual contracts for virtually any token with an existing AMM market. Protocol was introduced to lower the capital cost of providing liquidity, remove network-related barriers for traders. Core architecture liquidity is organized through the matching pool mechanism instead of maintaining individual maker books or constant product curves. The shared pool holds collateral supplied by liquidity providers. Interesting. It's gone absolutely parabolic. So it recently launched. It's still well within like tons of it coming out. Playing these ones that have very little history is really, really hard, but the gains on here have been tremendous. One of my core principles is, though, that I don't chase green candles and I don't chase boats that I already missed. So this has gone from 6 cents or 7 cents here to 200x already, which is incredible gains. But if I were to take a trade, it would just be a short-term trade like Paul's talking about, where he's just taking it for the short term with a stop in, because it might have another run to the upside. If you look at the chart, how Paul was looking at, it traded sideways. It took 2 steps forward, traded sideways, didn't really step back much. It broke to the upside, and we're seeing a similar pattern here. Maybe there's another break to the upside. Do I take short-term trades? No, not usually. Not yet. What I like is higher predictability. And when there's companies with very little history on the trading, the predictability is lower. We're not in that point of the altcoin market where just so much capital is coming in. And in that time of the bull market, sometimes I do take some short-term trades. But I feel like the predictability is higher because you can see so much money coming into the overall market. A lot of the money going into this is just changing hands from other places in the crypto market coming into here. Now, there is money coming in big ways into some of the crypto market, mostly the really big large caps, like the ISO coins, like Bitcoin, like ETH, Solana. Avalanche gets some of that. Sale did mention one of the reasons Cardano really picked up and got some traction is they did make themselves ISO 20022 compliant. So when Trump won office, you saw a big run up in XRP and a bunch of the ISO coins. Cardano was included with that. All right. Wealth Abundance says, hey, finally caught alive. Hope all is well and can't wait to experience the wins after waiting since Q4 2021. It's a really good time to be here. If you've ever gone surfing, I thought about this statement my brother-in-law made. Now, my brother-in-law was rich. He became a millionaire about the age of 21, at the age of like 21. And he's much older than that now, and he's started and sold and made tons of money. And one of the things he thinks about is getting on a movement before it happens. So he says timing is everything, and you have to, in order to ride the wave well, you have to be on and position well before the wave really comes in. And he's not wrong there. And so positioning, like a lot of what we've really been doing over the past 2.5 years, is positioning on this wave before it hits. Because though some people will be able to come in and ride this wave just coming right in, that's usually those with tons of capital. But the ones who really get the best ride are those that were already positioned waiting for it. And that's what I did during the bear market of 2018 through 2020. And that's what I've been doing this bear market. And that's what you all have been doing this bear market. That is what works, is buying what's low, using research to identify good probabilities with good projects, and then waiting to see how it plays out. All right, let's see. On to, so MYX is a buy for me? No, I just can't buy at these prices. I would even be taking profits off the table if I held this one. I didn't know about this one as it launched. I might not have even bought it. This whole perpetual futures thing has really taken off the last month or two, and known that narrative was going to run. Had I met the team and know a lot more, maybe in those early days I would have bought it, but I just can't chase this boat that I missed. So I'd be taking profits on it. It might break to the upside further and have some bigger gains, but it's already done 200x. Could it run some more? Yeah, it could. All right, let's look over at Avalanche and see what's going on with the price action there. I'm going to step away for a second, Paul. I'll be right back. Probably be back by the time you're done looking at the chart.
Okay. So if we take a step back and look at what's been going on with this chart, we can see that big bear market into here, rally 1, rally 2, and then we've got a rally going on, rally 3, I guess. Lows have not been breached, so that's a good sign. But it's a very balanced looking chart. Now, I think the last time we looked at this, we were discussing how it could work its way higher because of the macro situation. The market had broken out from this really nice base, so it was very clearly defined. And sometimes, and in this case it is the case, you get a really strong breakout, and then the market comes back and tests the breakout point, which it's done in this case. And it's also, what we could draw in here is an upward trend line that it's sort of respecting this trend rate as well. So whilst it's not a nice thing to see the market correct back towards a breakout point, having traded much higher and through it in such a clean way, and by clean I mean it's broken the level, closed at the high of that point, so it didn't hesitate once it did break out, squeezed up, but then it's come all the way back in a relatively short space of time. This correction isn't really what we'd want. At least it is hanging on to or holding and respecting the breakout level. So it's like it's moved up a level, it's gone into a different zone, and it should still work its way up higher, given that this is, or should be, the start of a new bullish trend. Now, I can certainly accept that there's a lot of supply given the bigger chart and how there's longs from here and there's longs from here that may be looking to take profit. So it's got its work cut out to break higher, but that trend is working up quite nicely. And given a balance, I would say on balance for me, it would be a buy. It wouldn't be a massively strong, but well, I like the fact that it's through this base technical buy point was a really strong one, but there are other factors that are kind of slowing it down a bit, so that kind of attenuates it slightly. So I would say for me it's still a buy, and I'd like it to obviously hold over this trend line. I want to hold it to hold over this support line that it's respected really nicely, the retest of this breakout point. That would be good. And the next challenge it's got is this resistance line here. So if it can get through here, then it may really start to accelerate, and coming back to it in a few weeks or months time to see whether it's up here testing these levels or whether it's still going sideways would be pretty important. So for me, it's a buy. It may make a meal of working its way up, but we'll have to just see.
Yeah, I like that overall price action. Let's see the buy. There we go. Let's take a look a little bit on things that CoinMarketCap gives us good information on. First of all, the market cap. Whoops, that's all right. Has it at almost a $13 billion market cap. Now, Avalanche is interesting. It's a great project, and it's a layer 1 blockchain that's EVM compatible, so it works well with ETH and moving money back and forth. And it's got good speeds, and I think they made some smart moves. They got Gunzilla Games to build off the grid on it in their NFTs. I do think as blockchain gaming runs, I think Avalanche does very well for a blue chip. So I don't hold any Avalanche. I think it's a pretty good blue chip, but like I said before, I don't hold hardly any blue chips at all. Its market cap's already at 13 billion. Where can something like this go? 50 billion, 100 billion. Depends on how hard certain things run. It's not only solely blockchain gaming building on Avalanche, but I do think they'll get some really good benefits as blockchain gaming runs. I think one of the biggest blockchain games in the world is going to be off the grid. And as everyone's talking about that, I think Avalanche is going to get a significant extra boost just because of that. I say extra boost because I think it would have done well even if they didn't have that. So it's a decent one. I think in the pricing strategy, it's been trading sideways and down for quite a while here. Generally in this trend, I think it's preparing, getting some momentum to get ready to break to the upside. And we saw that somewhat in Bitcoin dominance. The Bitcoin lost some of its dominance. A lot of that money moved into ETH and some other things. But it hasn't cascaded through the rest of the market yet. And probably that will happen in this quarter or the next quarter. At least that's my estimation on the probabilities. So for me, it doesn't get a buy like it would if I were buying blue chips. I would buy it at this price if that were part of my strategy and blue chips was included in that. But am I actually buying it? No, I'm mostly in the higher risk stuff. All right. Yeah, Abe says COPI is still at the dock. He's right. We'll take a look at COPI. AVAX on Binance log chart looks really, really good at the apex of a huge triangle, similar to how XRP was before it broke out. Anything on Polka Starter with the Polka Trader launch and new fundamentals? I haven't followed the Polkadot ecosystem for a long time. I'm concerned about the Polkadot ecosystem and does it make it? I don't know. I still have some Polkadot ecosystem coins and tokens. I just haven't followed on them at all because it's a harder ecosystem to follow right now. So much of it isn't being discussed. Not many interviews to see, but I'd be interested for those that want to send me relevant links to interviews with either the Polkadot team or other things happening on Polkadot. Let's see. So let's look at, we've still got OMI to go, and then we'll get into some of the suggestions. One thing that Chris had asked, Chris had wanted to see, Chris, you asked in the comment section, what was it? It was like the M2 money supply or something. Chris is here in the comments. You would put that on the comment of last week's video, asking us to look for it this week. Can you just refresh my memory on what that was? Meantime, let's pull up OMI and take a look at OMI.
Yeah. So OMI, not a lot's happening, is it? It's kind of going sideways within this compression, this triangular constriction. We got the breakout, made a short-term low, broke a great resistance point, exploded higher, came back for correction one, and then the price action is compressing. So you can see the highs and lows are getting closer and closer, which means it's ready for the next move. I think the last time I looked at it, I said it was still a buy, but I don't want to see it go through this 28.15 low because that would complete a kind of double top. The big level, big resistance, 54.77. That was the underwater level from here. It tested it many times and then eventually broke through that, tried to get through here, not sustained. It stopped at that point as well, which means it's even more important. So getting up and trading from a solid base and printing higher lows and higher highs as it gets through this is where I think it gets really interesting, and where some of the caution I think would start to alleviate. At the moment, it's just getting ready for a move. I don't like to use the word hope, but one would hope that the breakout would be to the upside. Part of that would be that usually a move like this indicates a change in dynamics and a start of a new trend. And the only thing that the only other thing I would like to see is I want to see a defined low where we can draw a new upward trend line at this sort of rate. I mean, I could put in a line, but it has to be confirmed as, let me just change that to a solid line. It has to be confirmed as a new trend. And as you can see, the support here, I can't say that that's definitely the low that means that the market's going to trend up. And if I tried that from this point, the market's broken through that, and then this point, the market's broken through it, and then each one of those lows, I'm having to readjust that line. And that's not necessarily a problem, but it's also something that does need to be resolved at some point to confirm that this is the new trend. So it shakes out to it's still a buy, but there are a few caveats, and it's probably very close to doing something in either direction, given the way it's compressing. And I would say, on balance, that should be to the upside, given that broader markets look bullish. So that would get my bias.
So OMI has been at an amazing price for a long time, and good things don't last for forever. So I love it when projects where fundamentally I think that the project is strong, and yet their token price gets really, really cheap, and it creates incredible opportunities if the company then does do big things, and I think it will. So this price down here was just amazing. It was almost too good to be true. And too good to be true doesn't last for forever. It's now in this pattern, and this pattern, like Paul said, on balance, breaks to the upside. That doesn't guarantee it's going to break to the upside, but what I've seen is about 2/3 of the time it breaks to the upside with this kind of flag pattern. And I think that's what it's going to do. Now, I didn't know why it was moving like this, but I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were sharing some fundamental things on things that happened behind the scenes. And a lot of the big people with money that had been selling have sold everything. It's all been bought up from them. And there are some big things happening that aren't on people's radar yet, and then this price action made sense, because I wondered why it broke to the upside here, and I didn't know. But then with what I learned, I was like, I get why it broke to the upside, and I get why it's flagging like this, and the odds are this going to break to the upside further. Now, maybe you get really lucky and it breaks to the downside here. And that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing. But I don't think the chances are that it's going to play out that way. I think it's going to break further the upside. And I think these prices are gone. And people will look back at this and they'll be like, damn it, why didn't I load the boats at those prices? Well, that's the downside of not having a magic crystal ball, is it seems like really good prices will last for forever. And they don't. Eventually, being underpriced for too long, it catches up, and people buy the massive decreased prices, and the price never comes back to there. So it's been a blessing that it got cheaper than it probably ever should have, and yet it did, and that's a good thing. And then sometimes things go too expensive, more expensive than they ever should have, in a blow off top of the bull run, and that's a great time to be selling into that. We're not there yet. We're at the other side of that, where it got too cheap and it's barely starting to go the other way, in my opinion. I think there's a lot more to come. All right, some of the other suggestions. Let's see. We have cornucopias. Let's take a look at that.
Okay. Yeah, so let's just zoom in. Last time we looked at it, this was the line. Potential reversal pattern was forming, confirmation through this resistance point. We've not had that breakthrough, and so actually the market's gone in the other direction. So this other line here was where it should have held support. It's not holding that support. So for me, it's definitely a wait, because I want to see it in this zone. I want to see it challenging this resistance point, because a break of that then gives me confirmation of a base or a broader base. This is, in terms of time, also going on a bit longer than it should. What have we got? 1, 2, 3, 6. Yeah, the number of weeks it's being in this sort of, if it's going to be an inverse head and shoulders, it's got on too long here. So it's turning into something else now. It's less clear whether well, I think it will eventually turn into a base, but it's definitely not an inverse head and shoulders. What can happen with something like this? It turns into a bigger double bottom or a double base, so it goes down and then all the way back up again. So I think it could potentially go a bit lower before it recovers. Now, I'm not saying that that's a low that I would want to buy into, because as it's approaching, if it does indeed approach lows around here, there is also the risk that it's going to take this particular low out, and that's, from a technical point of view, a bad sign, because it's clearly trading a new all-time low, or certainly on this chart. I know we're getting slightly ahead of ourselves in terms of what's going on with this chart, because it hasn't done that yet. I'm just thinking through the scenarios. So where it is right now is fairly balanced, and I would need to wait to see where it is in a few weeks' time, see if it's recovering up, especially if everything else is moving up. I'd want to see it move up with the other markets. If everything's moving up and this is still moving down, that's a bit of a warning sign. If everything is moving down and it's moving down with it, then it's pretty much just going with the flow. So until it can get back into this zone, I'm going to be a bit cautious on it, because I want to see this line broken. And then if and when it does that, then I will become bullish on it, because it will confirm a base. And actually, even if it takes a few weeks or maybe a month or so to do that, the base will be an even bigger base, which is a good sign for setting up a longer term rally. But it hasn't done it yet. I guess we're going to have to be a bit more patient on this until it does.
Yeah, I don't know that it's ready to break further to the upside. They had a recent momentum swing with their land sale. And I think that's part of what precipitated this spike going up here. And then it settled back down some. So it's not as cheap as it got here. It went down to 1.1 cents. It went down here a little bit cheaper to about 1 cent. So I do think this is a larger double bottom. And in the bottom of the bear market, it got just a little bit cheaper than it did here. But it's pretty dang close to it. Like Abe said, cornucopia's pricing is still at the dot. I like buying cheap. And cornucopias has done fantastic at updating the community on where things are at, where their development is at, what's going on with the game. They recently did their land grab thing. So if you bought land really 3.5 years ago, you were able to claim that land and claim the actual piece of land in their bigger metaverse that they're building. And so that happened. That was pretty cool. It went really smooth. I was able to claim a bunch of mine. Some didn't get claimed because I didn't get it. So I have probably half my land that hasn't yet been claimed, my land things. They are going to release 2 more areas. So we'll see. But overall, they did a good job on that. I would say it is. I like where the development is going. I hope they have plenty of funds to continue to survive till blockchain gaming hits. It might not be all that far away. It might be a couple months away if this final quarter of 2025 is when really the altcoin rally really hits. But it could also be 6 months away, because it might not be till next quarter, like Q1 2026, that blockchain gaming really blasts off. And so they have to survive till then. But if they do survive till then, I think with their development, they'll be ahead of the curve and be positioned well to ride that blockchain gaming run. And if so, then this will have been an incredible buy, with the prices probably going to way higher than this. Something like this can go to a several billion-dollar market cap. And right now it's trading at a $15 million market cap. There we go. Chris says it was the crypto total 2 chart.
Yeah.
The total market cap of all the cryptos minus Bitcoin.
Yeah, I've got it.
Stats on it for the alt season.
Yeah. I've got the chart. Yeah, but I thought you wanted to look at Filecoin first.
Either one, whichever one you have ready. We'll
okay. I had the other one ready before, and then we went to the other pick. So let's do Filecoin, and I'll go to total 2.
Sounds great.
Cool. So Filecoin, I could be pretty quick on this. This is still a wait. I mean, the rallies have been quite muted. We need a change in dynamics to take it out of this downward trend. This was the line. I haven't just put this in. This was the line in from last time, that it needs to break at least that to start some form of new impulse move. And it hasn't done that since. So there's no real change since whatever we said last time, or whatever I said last time for me. You have to look at it in the context of the lows, and the lows, it's still very much near the lower end of the whole of the chart. So that for me makes me cautious until it can lift up from that. So yeah, for me, it's still a wait. I've put this line in as well. So if it does break out, that would be the next area where I'd want it to get through in order to confirm a bull market. But it's got to do this first breakout first. Yeah, and just to say, like, sometimes these things can move very quickly. So even though not a lot's changed, it's still fine to keep looking at it. I'd rather look at it and see that nothing's changed than see that we should have seen a breakout, if that makes sense. So let us know if we if something happens again. Put it as a pick, and we'll look at it in a few more weeks.
Having been around since 2017, it's been fun because I was around for a lot of this historical stuff. And Filecoin launch way back here, and everybody was talking about it. Oh, do you have any Filecoin? And it's like, I already understood the principle of, like, I don't chase boats that I missed. And it just got punished during the bear market and came all the way down to $3. It then blasted up to crazy prices at like $191 here. And now it's come down 99%, down to $2. And it's in the decentralized file storage narrative. Now, as of like 3 years ago, and I haven't really looked closely since then, like, there were some people that were involved in blockchain development that said that their file storage didn't work. It wasn't working. And that is concerning. If they've resolved that, great. I mean, this narrative is a really strong narrative, this idea of decentralized storage. I think there's room for it to run in this upcoming bull run too, and the price is severely punished. So as long as their technology isn't so flawed that it's like unsavable, if that's the case, then it probably, I've even seen poop fly in a bull run. Like, one project tripled in price. Meanwhile, the founder had been locked up for fraud, and yet the token tripled in price in a bull run. So that doesn't mean it won't go up, but I would want to ensure before loading up on this one that, well, that their storage solution does work, and they should have had plenty of time to prove that it does, being 8 years in the making now. So if it's the case and it works just fine, this is an amazing buy. Its market cap is still $1.5 billion, but a lot of the tokens are in circulation. One of my concerns way back here, and even way back here, was there was so little tokens in circulation that the market cap was such a fraction of the percentage of the overall fully diluted value. Now there's about a third of the tokens in circulation, which is still a lot lower than I would like to see, but a better situation than it was. This may be an amazing price if their solution works. They still are continuing to unlock their tokens, but it's really going to slow down here over time. So it was really accelerated in this time period during 2021, 2022, but it slowed down a lot here. All right, let's take a look at the crypto total 2. Oh, shoot, I wasn't even showing my my chart the whole time. That's right. Filecoin is it's iffy as to whether I'd buy. I'd need to verify that information first. All right, let's take a look at total 2.
Yeah. So, Chris, thank you for drawing our attention to this chart, because it is actually a very interesting one. I can pretty much guarantee that around this area here, I would have been looking for a breakout, because, fantastic resistance point, and it came up and tested it. That was in December last year. And since then, we've had the correction, and it's come back 100% retraced that move, which is really interesting, because now it looks like it's trying to break through it. In fact, it has done, and is consolidating, but still pushing up. So this is a great looking chart, and I would suggest that the move should be at least towards this. Well, it's difficult. If I start giving targets, then it's an expectation, but the pressure is on the upside for a clearly defined breakout. So, that's what I'd expect from this. It's right on the edge of it, and even in the short term, the retracements have been relatively light. So, yeah, great looking chart. It should break out, and given that indicates that the altcoin season could run further or harder. Yeah, it's a really nice looking thing to indicate that. So, and it should be a sharp move. So that would suggest we could be close to something quite significant. So yeah, really good shout.
What I think some people don't realize about crypto is it unlocks technology, the internet, to be able to do things it could not do before in a more trusted way than was ever before possible. That's why things like ownership of video game items in a decentralized way is possible. That's why decentralized collectibles is possible. That's why so many things are possible. The combination of cryptographic encryption and blockchain or a distributed ledger allows the internet to do things it couldn't do before. And so the internet, the amount of money that can come into the internet because of greater efficiencies is tremendous. And so that's what we're really investing in here. I mean, that's really what crypto is all about. Now, some have, get distracted with the meme coins, just kind of like, I think of meme coins like the Beanie Baby craze. It's like, did some people make money on Beanie Babies? Yeah, some did. And you're really just trading sentiment in that case. But the bigger thing that's going on here that really drives real value to crypto is that it unlocks greater efficiencies in the internet. And that's the types of businesses I want to invest in. Some of those are video games, because the video games can now give you true ownership of the items. And I think true ownership is a really big deal. And I like investing in those kinds of things. So Illuvium, DEVVE has a game, Litcraft. I think Gunzilla Games Off the Grid is incredible. Big A and I haven't played it much in a month and a half, but I played a ton of that game for really since it launched about 9 months ago. And I love that game. It's incredible. It's definitely a AAA level. It's the kind of game that can go viral, I think, as people wrap their mind around this idea, they actually own the items and that they can capture the value of those items. I think that's going to go huge, especially as you'll be able to put those items on a marketplace and say trade them for the Avalanche token or maybe even for ETH, and really capture the value of your skins or your different weapons or your different items in that game. Some of your exclusive items, like the partnership they did with Bored Ape Yacht Club, where they had some Bored Ape skins, or the Trump skins, I think will do really well because they're just so unique. And as tons of people come into blockchain gaming, there will be far fewer of those items than the people playing, and they'll become flex items for the few that have them. And that will drive some value there. And people get a taste for ownership in video games. Once they get a taste for that, non-ownership will not be attractive to them anymore. The Gay says they're still playing it every day. Pull up whenever, Rain. Yeah, I'll probably join you guys some soon. I've been playing Illuvium to catch up on that and catching some alluvials. Catching up on a few other games that I'm invested in. I am invested in Gunzilla Games. What I've liked about it the past 9 months is you could earn some of these exclusive skins that I think will have value. So literally you could extend what you had by just playing. And so you could invest some time into some things that would probably have some value. All right. Chris asked the question, do you think it will drop and retest 100K? He's talking about Bitcoin. Or is it up and up from here?
If that's for me, then I would say on balance, I think it's going to go. I don't think it's going to hit 100 and then go up. I think it's going to go up from here. But, you know, it's I could be wrong. So, you know, I would do what you think is right, but given the probability for me, I think it's made its correction and I think it's getting ready to go. But, you know, even if it did hit 100, I still wouldn't change my view that we're in this bull market. So yeah, it'd be wrong about that call, but the trend is still going higher. So that's why I would still have that bias. That's why where it is now, it's been, to be fair, to a certain extent, leading the way. But I think it's also a good indicator of the health of the crypto market. If it was to go just sideways and everything else goes up, that's pretty good. Let everything else catch up. That would be great. But yeah, if I had to trade it now, I would be long. I'd be buying it here. Just because this chart looks so saying right at the top of the show, maybe you missed it and came in a bit later. This is kind of more compressed, which is indicative of a continuation pattern as opposed to a reversal, which would be more like this, where you get like 2 peaks and then a correction. So that would be my guess at this point.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the days of 100K Bitcoin are over, but I don't know that. One of the reasons we approach things the way we do in the crypto space isn't just because we're not financial advisors. But at the end of the day, like, you're the hero in your story. And part of being the hero is going through the pains of making your best guess from all the information that you've gleaned. And sometimes you're going to be right and sometimes you're going to be wrong. And when you're right, you get to take full credit for that victory. And when you're wrong, you get to take full credit for the lesson that you get to learn from that. And this is what helps you become a savage investor, is over time you become good at this, especially if you're taking the time to evaluate what went right, what went wrong. If it went wrong, why did it go wrong? If it went right, why did it go right? And you become good at this, because if you can become good, essentially in crypto, where you're using your money to make money for you if you're doing it wisely. Now, you can just lose that money if you're not investing it diversified and wisely. So you're learning how to make your money make money for you. And at first, you're always bad before you're good when you're doing something new. But if you put in the time and effort to become good, then this skill will benefit you the whole rest of your life. And if you notice in all the stories, like the hero goes through like trials and learning curves and freaking, in this case, a long bear market. It feels like it lasts for forever. And that's part of your story. That's part of what's made you become a savage, is going through that. And you don't want to take that away, though it sucks going through it. And you wonder, is this ever going to work out? That's part of every hero story ever. All right. Yeah, we can look at DEVVE, Mike. We'll take a look at DEVVE. We'll take a look at Star Atlas. Big Ace says, looks like Pudgy Penguins is coming next for off the grid. That would be fun. If that's the case, I will jump on a bunch and play, and I will try to earn a whole bunch of the Pudgy Penguin stuff. When they had the off the grid stuff, I literally played about every day to earn, is not off the grid, but the Bored Ape stuff. So I could buy as many of those Bored Ape skins as possible. All right. All right, DEVVE. There we go.
Yeah. It's simply a wait here. It's going sideways. No change really from what we saw last time. It has actually now conclusively gone through this trend line, which is not the best sign, I have to say. So we do need to see it reverse and start the new trend. So it's where it is here is halfway pretty much between the low and the high. So this is a balancing point that it very much needs to get on the upper side of this in order to start this new trend. And it's over the weeks, it's been just compressing. It's very similar to some of the other charts where you're seeing the highs and the lows come together, and we will get a resolution soon. And again, hopefully that will be to the upside. It's not absolutely guaranteed, but it's given what we're seeing elsewhere, it should be, but it might not be. So we'll have to wait and see. We do need to see individual confirmation. I mean, it is possible that everything can run and this doesn't, and we're going to be open to all possibilities. Very important support here at 40 cents. It's been testing that quite a few times and it's held, which is good. I would just like to see the dynamics change a bit. It's just kind of been compressing and compressing. So no real change there. So I would say at this point it's a wait, and but I do kind of favor it because I do think there is still potential for it to go higher, but I want it to at least show us that on the charts by sustaining a breakout.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. So here I've got it pulled up on Deck Screener, and I think we got a bigger W pattern, but we'll see how it plays out. Often these W patterns come down. They then have a higher low. So here was the previous low. Here's a higher low. Keep in mind they had a whole lot of vesting going on, pre-sale investor vesting going on that really drove it to those lows. And those pre-sale investors eventually ran out of tokens to dump. It's climbed back up all the way to $1.80 in hopes that they would announce this big announcement that they've been teasing for forever, but that announcement still hasn't come. Meantime, price has been punished. What I like about DEVVE is they're one of the fastest blockchains out there. They really have very low awareness for what they're doing. And they did something fundamentally smart, is they took the time to build it so that their blockchain integrates with API calls. So instead of using Solidity or a language that developers have to learn in order to interact with it, they used a language most web programmers already know, which is API calls. So they can just integrate with something 90% of language 90% of programmers already speak. Now, will they get traction? This is the type of investment I like because there's the reason their market cap isn't way higher than it is now. I think they have enough substance that their market cap could be at a $2 or $3 or $4 billion market cap, but they don't have the awareness for that. Like, people are completely unaware of what DEVVE is across the broader crypto market. And so if they close that awareness gap, that's where you get the huge additional gains. Because I feel like if the whole crypto space were aware of it already, its market cap would be maybe $4 billion and probably do well in the coming bull run. If they can close that awareness gap, so everybody in the crypto space becomes aware of them, and then it does whatever it's going to do in the bull run on top of that, you can get significant gains here. Like could go 1,000x from here. Now, will it? I don't know. Could though. Could, and that's what I'm betting on. So I hold a lot of DEVVE. Now, has it felt lackluster? Well, yeah. I mean, this is what the pain looks like of it not doing well, or like not really taking off. And if you remember when the charts were heading down here and I was covering it, it hit this 14 cents price. I was like, this is crazy. It's only really because the token vesting price pressure has pushed it down so cheap, but don't expect that to last for forever, because it won't. And sure enough, it turned around and, you know, jumped all the way up to almost $2 and has since come back down. And what I'd say again is don't expect these low prices to last for forever, because they won't. And I don't know when. It's not clear on this when the breakout is going to happen. Just like here, it was completely impossible to tell when the breakout was going to flip around. There was still token vesting going on to pre-sell investors beyond this point. So it wasn't clear when the vesting when it would turn around, and yet all of a sudden, suddenly it did. Isn't clear here based on the price charting either. But what I do is I'm not trading breakouts. I'm trading when I feel like, for what a project has to offer and where their leadership is at, where things are at, that I'm buying it when I feel like it's too cheap. And I do think DEVVE is too cheap at the current price. I think overall it's a great buy, but it's got great potential upside. For those that bought in here, it's already gone up triple what you bought at. But I think the potential for upside is much, much bigger here. All right, Star Atlas, and then Ronin. Jeez.
Yeah, I can't find Star Atlas, unfortunately. I've looked everywhere.
If you just look up Atlas, it should be there.
Okay. Right. Okay. Yeah, this is still under pressure, unfortunately. Trend is down and not holding. It's holding one level of support, which was the all-time low on the chart. It needs to print a higher low to change the trend. Does it look like it's doing it? Not really. It looks like it's going to be pressing lower. So for me, it's a wait. At the very least, it needs to break this line from May. So we draw that downward trend line there. It's respecting that line more than others, which is, you know, pointing in the wrong direction. So at the very least, I want to see this short-term trend line break to the upside to give an indication that dynamics are changing. So I think we're going to have to come back to that. But at the moment, it does look like it's under a bit of pressure.
Yeah, blockchain gaming has been solidly out of the narrative, which is why so many of the blockchain gaming projects, their price essentially looks like this. And this is the good thing, not a bad thing. They've gone down to $17 million market cap. I checked out recently where their gaming development's at, and they've got some good stuff going on. So they have put in the work during the bear market. I think that this survives, and I think it's positioned well. So this gets a buy for me. Overall market, a lot of their tokens are in circulation. It looks like close to 2/3 the tokens are in circulation. And it's been extremely punished. I think when blockchain gaming comes back to the narrative, that this one does tremendous. So it does get a buy for me. Let's take a look at Ronin real quick, and then we'll be done for the day. Shout out to, like, if you guys haven't followed Tokenized 360, Freelander, one of our community members, makes a lot of videos on blockchain gaming and playing a bunch of the games, and games that probably, if you're interested in investing in the space, good games to put on your radar. So definitely follow him. And so he's got one covering how how to earn pudgy party skins. All right, let's take a look at Ronin.
Okay. So huge potential for the second half is the comment. That's interesting. Yeah, it may well have. From a technical point of view, the trend is still kind of down, and it's more in the down area than the up area. So it's harder to draw an upward trend line and easier to draw a downward trend line. But it has held on to some key support here at 39 cents. This low here has been matched here, and it's reacted from it, which is a good sign, but it needs to do a bit more than that. Again, we've got another very clear downward trend line, which has been touched on a few occasions, needs to get through that as step one. We could even like move that up to here and include this high within that. And so we get this trend rate where it's respecting this line 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times it's touched it and it's not been able to get through it. So let's come back to this once it's broken this trend line. If you see that happening, or I should call it a resistance line, if you see that happening, then ask for it again, and we can see whether it's started a move. And often these things happen in the way where they look like they're just going to go down, they look like nothing's happening, and then all of a sudden there's a breakout and the dynamics change. So I'll just repeat what I said earlier, that even though it doesn't look like much is happening now, I'm quite happy to look at it on the basis of working out where those levels are going to change the dynamics. So let's come back to it in a few weeks. So for me, it's a wait at this point until it's broken this resistance line, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Here we go. So they're at a $327 million market cap, which is quite high, but justifiable. So way back in the day, the early days of blockchain gaming, Gods Unchained was one of the first games out there, and it was backed by Coinbase. It was one I invested in. They launched like a card-based game, which I'm not very familiar how to play it. I did try playing it some. I just get my butt kicked every time I've tried playing it because I don't really understand how to play those kind of games. But they did develop Immutable X because you had to pull your assets off of ETH because the transaction fees were crazy. And so you couldn't sell a $5 item when you have a $50 gas fee. So they had to build their own layer 2 to move it onto so that transactions could happen. Well, Axie Infinity was also based on ETH at first, and they had to develop their own layer 2 to pull everything off of so that the transactions could happen. And they did. They built Ronin. And now they're going to do all their blockchain games on Ronin, including Axie Infinity, but they've got other games in the queue. And I think Ronin's going to be a really big deal. I'm really impressed with what Axie Infinity has done. Axie Infinity playing itself, I don't like turn-based games. Made a fortune on Axie Infinity, and it came together well. Though most people who weren't around don't realize that there was like 2 points that I was strongly concerned that the project was going to fail. And yet some things happened and turned things around for them that they didn't fail, and they became one of the biggest successes of 2021. But they did so well that even though blockchain gaming has pulled back significantly, they still get tons of transactions happening, and they still get tons of revenues from their Axie Infinity game alone. Just taking a small transaction tax, they do quite well, and they've got funding to really build out something great in the blockchain gaming space. And they're continuing to develop Axie Infinity as well as other games. And I think Ronin's going to do quite well. I think Ronin's going to be one of the big players in blockchain gaming. And so a lot of the tokens are out. The fully diluted value is 472 million. The market cap 327 million. And I like where the pricing's at. That we had a blockchain gaming run that kicked off in October 2023. And so it went from about 40 cents, roughly where it's trading at now, all the way to 420. And then it pulled back down to that same price spectrum that it was at before the big run up. So it's 90% off from where it was. I like the value here. I think in a blockchain gaming fund, it can go 10, 20, 30, 50, maybe more than that times where the price is at right now. So at this price, I think you're right. It is a bias, kind of a W pattern in that it was at a high price here and came up, but it's at that second leg, which is like a higher low than it was during the bear market. But I just don't think it's going to come down to these prices of 23 cents, 22 cents, 24 cents like it did. I think this is pretty close to as low as it's going to go, this pullback, and it's probably going to go up in the coming month to 2 months from here. So I'd say it's a buy. Oh, Axie's MMO is in early access. Good to know. Company behind Ronin is starting buybacks. Really, really good information. So I'm telling you to follow Freelander's channel at Tokenized360 on YouTube. All right, guys. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, especially big shout out to Paul. Thank you for joining us and giving us your time. We appreciate DEVVE lending you to us. Love getting your insights.
My pleasure. Thanks, guys. Thanks for the picks. See you next week.
All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, if you've had a chance to get to know Paul over time, he's just so humble, just so cool. And that's why he's so valuable. Like, it literally is some of the best price analysis in all of the crypto space. Realize most people that are showing you price analysis in the crypto space, they're like 2 years or 3 years or 4 years into space, and they're just brand new at, you know, price analysis and charting and stuff. Paul's been doing this for 30 years. Paul has billionaires that call him to talk about what his thoughts are on things. So let's just say he's good at this, much more than someone who's had a YouTube channel for 2 or 3 or 4 years and been in the crypto space for, say, 4 years. And so we're blessed to have him join us. It's amazing that he gives us the time that he does. He's a legend. Appreciate you all joining us too. I hope you're enjoying this journey. Yeah, you're feeling the pain, but it's the pain. It's kind of like all those workouts and whatever you've gone through in your life that help you accomplish something great. You can look back and there were some hard times, but it came together and led you to what you were trying to get to anyway, if you just endured through it. And some of this is just enduring through it. Like, we're not there at the finish line. We're still like on that big hike, midway through the hike, or maybe even near the end, but we're definitely in the swamplands of that hike, and it probably sucks right now still, and it's been sucking for a while. We're close to the part where you get to the beautiful views and that beautiful destination we're looking for. And then probably be time to take profits, harvest, and for those that are willing, do it all over again. So I know this time, as the market goes crazy, I'm going to take half of my gains. I'm going to put them and deploy them into stuff outside of crypto. Still keep half in, but I want to build some nice passive income streams outside of crypto, so I'm not subject to the volatility of crypto, because, as you know, the volatility isn't strength, but it's also a weakness if you're looking to set up passive gains to build a lifestyle on. All right, everyone, we will see you soon. Enjoy this wrap. I was thinking about this wrap the other day. It's just really a fun way to recap the principles in memorable ways that drive like great returns over time. This is what the 5%ers that make all the returns in crypto do, and this is how they think about it. It's just a fun way to encapsulate it.
Came into the space chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, shit, right before you could was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the post that I miss, cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't lead with my heart. Principles up all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, got parabolic to dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong could soon become a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow would be the target. Naysayers come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. I'm strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be cracking. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes it time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough. And that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.